Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the statewide lab partnership meeting. I've got just a few more things to set up and then we'll be able to get started. We'll give time to allow others to sign in too. Can you all see an agenda?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. All right. All right. I have 12 o'clock, actually 12:01 straight up. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our statewide lab meeting today. I think that we're going to mix up our meeting today as we have a fairly big topic to talk about. But just to let you know that our meeting is recorded today. If you have any questions or if you have any staff member that are not able to join us today, they can access this recording, which will be on our website here in another day. So attendance, if you haven't already done so, please document your attendance in our chat. Be sure to include anybody that might be in your conference room if you have others with you, and put your name and facility in which you're in. So please be sure to put that in your chat. With that, I want to know if we have any new staff members at DHHS that you would like to introduce. Robin, are you on our call today?
Yep, I don't have any new staff.
Okay. All right, that's fine. And I do have two I'd like to introduce to you. And that would be Ben Ayers and also Becky Bonacci, who have just recently come on to NPHL and would be filling my state training coordinator position as sometime next year. I do hope to retire. So I'm glad to bring them on. And I wonder if, Ben, you could just briefly introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your background, how much microbiology you have behind you. You are off mute now.
Yeah, hi, my name's Ben. I'm coming from the clinical micro lab over at Nebraska Medicine. I was over there for almost 7 years. Been a couple weeks on here at NPHL, so still learning a lot, but enjoying it.
Yeah. And Becky, I'm going to put you on the spot too. I know it's not easy, so it would be in your ribbon that's hiding. There you go.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Becky Benacci. I actually came over from CHI Bergen Mercy Hospital. I have been over in microbiology. I probably have about 10, 11 years experience over there. And I've been here since October 17th.
That's right. Thank you, Becky. So I think we've got some great additions to our team. And as we move along and possibly even start doing some traveling next year, you'll get to meet these new faces again. So rather than doing the outbreak section, I'd like to start with client services and just ask if there's any client service comments. If Anna, you are on, or Brian Lenz, if you have any comments.
I am on, this is Brian Lenz. I don't have any client service issues. Obviously, shipping category A and B are always challenges, and I think we had a few of those last week, but those have been addressed. So, so far, so good.
Okay, good to know. And that is one of the biggest reasons we're going to be talking about some of the, Ebola and also some of the other viruses, the hemorrhagic viruses as well, that would be category A too. So yeah, it's definitely an issue, and hence why I wanted to bring it up today. Did I have Anna, or is she not on today? I bet I don't hear her on. Okay. No problem. NewLert, does any laboratory have questions on NewLert or have had some issues with NewLert? Please unmute if you have questions. Any questions about NewLert? All right. Okay, well, then we'll just go ahead and move forward. I wanted to bring up Ebola for the simple reason we've had quite a few questions about it. I'm not going to go through a lot of detail today, but I want our laboratorians to start thinking about this whole process. And yeah, you might say it happened 7 years ago, so this is all planned out. Well, I want to make sure that there's been a lot of changes since then, not a lot of new suggestions, and a lot more resources to refer to. So hence why we'll bring it up. One real big comment is that this is at very low risk to our Nebraska group here. This year, in 2022, compared to back in 2014, 2015, we have, I think, plans better placed now. The United States, or what we would call the larger national corporate or companies, the organizations, the State Department, that's the term I'm looking for. The State Department literally does have the 5 airports that are that go through Uganda. There is now a screening process. So the screening process hopefully will pick up 99% of anybody that might potentially have Ebola. As we all know, the one, can I call it, good thing about Ebola is that it does not shed virus until the patient has the symptoms. So unlike influenza, COVID, where a patient might, a potential person with those diseases would be shedding organism or virus, excuse me, long before the patient has symptoms. So hence screening should work in Uganda. And we, in the State Department, is monitoring anybody who has been known to even travel through that particular country. So yes, in Nebraska, we might have, although I'm just saying we might have, as a theory, we might have somebody in Nebraska that we are monitoring, but in reality, the risk is very low to us. So the whole point, though, is that 1% of the time when something does happen and you have somebody showing up in your emergency door who potentially is showing symptoms, maybe not willing to share their travel history. And when it's finally figured out, there's really a couple things that you can do. So we want to make sure that all hospitals review their hospital preparedness policy. Obviously, laboratory policy is going to be built in to your hospital preparedness. And so you will start there with your hospital policy and then work toward that laboratory plan. Do know that the state has what is called the concepts of operation, ConOps, and we also have now provided by NETEC something called a frontline hospital guideline. And I'm going to bring this up real quickly if I can. And what is really cool about this is that it really comes as a checklist and suggestions to each of our front lines as to what can be done in the case that this happens. So obviously it's built in the three, actually, I'm going to say 4 criteria of, identifying the patient, isolating them, and then as soon as you can, informing whoever you possibly can. First off, informing who you need to in your facility, and then in your local health department and beyond to your state department or your state health department. Talks much about the PPE that is required not only for Ebola, but for all the viral hemorrhagic organisms. It talks about care, and within the care is the part about laboratory. And forgive me if I'm making you dizzy, but I think for laboratory, when it comes to the possibility of having to collect specimens, they may have you involved as laboratorians, and if not, hopefully not collecting, but the shipping part of it. And also the huge question comes up is, can your laboratory do any other testing? Knowing that typically what is tested at your public health lab is only to confirm the organism. We typically don't do support of the patient themselves. So like a CBC or other support of the patient would have to come from somewhere else. It would ideally come from your facility for turnaround time, but you are the ones that have to make that risk assessment, and you're the ones who have to let your physicians know if you can or cannot do that. And ideally, you'll be discussing that prior to when it possibly could happen, and that you have that kind of line in the sand drawn so that your physicians know what you can and cannot do. So a lot of guidance through there as for what laboratory can do to help be ready for these particular situations. So I would like to go back here And I will share that site with everybody, but you all have access to it. Okay, now if I can, am I back at my agenda? Can anybody tell me if that agenda? Thank you, Gerald. All right. So again, not only Ebola, but all viral hemorrhagic organisms are built with the identify, isolate, inform, and then one other that I like to keep there it is the initiate testing if your risk assessment has already been done. And that could include a specimen collection that you may be built or asked to help with specimen collection, certainly the transport. So have your risk assessments in front of you, know what biosafety is required of you in the laboratory. So there's a lot of references I've included here that I will not bring up at this point, but I think that you can use them in your planning, and I promise to share those with you too. As you know, a lot of the planning comes in checklist form, and hopefully you'll have prepped already what collection supplies you'll need and what is done in the hot zone, what can be handed off to the clean side, and what packaging and where the packaging can be handed off. Now, in Nebraska, State Patrol will be, we've had MOUs with State Patrol before, and we hope to again, although we're only in the context stage with working with them. So the point is that we really don't have a courier throughout the state who can curry a category A specimen. If we need something like this done, do know this is what we would consider a suspicious category A, but it still has to be put into a category A box. And with that, it can go legally by FedEx or UPS. But if we want, for reasons to have better turnaround time, we may ask for at least the first one or two specimen situations or outbreak situations, we might want State Patrol. But ideally, if you have this situation, you are going to be talking to the state epidemiologists and with us to help you assist with making the courier. You will not have to make courier connections or arrangements yourself. That is something that we will do for you. One of our former NPHL staff member, Vicky Herrera, who is now taken a position with NETEC and with our own Nebraska biocontainment unit, is on today. And I just thought if I could ask you, Vicky, to just chime in here and put a good word in for the recording we just did last week.
Well, sure. We did a webinar last week for the CDC on their One Lab test or platform.
Yes.
So that recording should be available, I think, within 2 weeks. And really, we're just talking about how specifically to mitigate risk. What are some of the things that you can do in your lab if you do need to do some sort of testing? So that's kind of my specialty, is just kind of helping labs walk through, if they do need to do testing, how they can do some simple things to help keep their laboratory safe. So happy to answer questions if there's anything specific that you have questions on with your laboratory or any other questions.
Yes, thank you, Vicky. Vicky and I and Roxanne Alter had essentially gone out through the entire state of Nebraska. We went along with a group called Heroes, which is a nursing unit that teaches advanced PPE and hopefully also ICAP. We joined in with ICAP, also a state organization that goes out to hospitals. So hopefully your hospital was visited at least at one time, walking you through the process of specimen collection, PPE, and what it takes to collect a more hazardous organism as this. And Vicky has some great ideas on her recording as to how to work with these organisms in your laboratory. If you find yourself having to look at possibly doing this. So I think it's a good recording. And Vicky, do you think that link is out yet? You said it might be another 2 weeks, right?
By the end of this week or next week, I think it is supposed to be available if it's not already. I did not check yet, but I'm thinking at least a week.
Okay, all right. So here is where I'd like to open it up to the laboratorians. Again, I know some of you have emailed me with questions. Does anybody else have questions they'd like to ask of our NPHL group? And maybe before you ask, one other plug I'd like to put in following up with Vicky's and the One Lab platform or program. There will be another One Lab program on just shipping category A. It will be pretty general because it is a national broadcast that we need to keep more general because each state can differ in their requirements of their laboratories. But I think it'll be a good reminder to all about your particular shipment of category A. I know there are two things when we talk about shipment of category A that you have to really consider, and that's number one, to make sure that you have at least one, if not more. We would recommend up to 3 people in your laboratory, and that's not always possible, I understand, but at least 1 to 2 people certified in packaging and shipping. I just had the classes last week. I know I did catch quite a few of you in that class, but we will try to advertise that again. The important thing about certification, though, is that the person who trains is not the person who certifies the person to ship. Because I, as trainer, I cannot certify a person because I don't see them shipping. I need to be able to witness that from beginning to end. And so, believe it or not, it is the employer or your lab manager who's going to certify you. So what does that mean as a manager? You all as managers should probably have the same class so you understand when you certify a person, you understand the process. And I think it would behoove us maybe at some point even to have a smaller class just for laboratory managers to brief them on what to look for and what kind of competency you can build in your program for shipping. So now I go back to my audience and ask if there's any questions for our laboratorians. I don't have my chat up, and I will try to bring that up here. I don't see any questions on chat. Anybody so willing to ask questions? Go ahead and take off mute. All right. So we've done this before, and hopefully you do have a plan. About a month ago, we did have a survey that went out to all laboratories in Nebraska, asking if you knew where your plan was and if you knew where your Ebola kit was. Unfortunately, some of the Ebola kits were used for COVID, which was not necessary, but I think some people were worried that first week of the outbreak that what might have still been a category A. So we have some of those boxes. We should be hopefully trying to get those back to you. But I know quite a few of you did say you did not know where your Ebola kit was. I do have some documentation that I can look to where your kit was kept. Most likely, if you don't have it in your laboratory, it's probably in your emergency room. But I could give you some of the names of who those kits originally were given. Maybe those people aren't there in the ER anymore, but maybe that might help start the process of discussing it with them and finding your kit. So, any other questions?
Vicki, this is for you. This is Gerald. Hey, I did watch your webinar last week. Question for you and this is going to be somewhat a crazy question, but there was kind of a comments made on obviously the symptomology with the patients with the viremic load, which is typical with most viruses. But can you use that in assessment that they come in fairly asymptomatic versus someone that obviously has diarrhea and vomiting? Those obviously probably have a higher potential viremia if they have it. Can we make assessments like that, or that's just way too subjective?
I would say it's a little bit subjective on that. Their viremia that we've seen in previous cases, and that was with Zaire, not with Sudan. So I can't really speak to the Sudan virus, but Zaire, they went up very, very quickly. So, they could be asymptomatic and then turn, and their viremia will go way up very quickly. But again, that's with Zaire, not necessarily with Sudan. But again, I would just assume that you may be dealing with a special pathogen and treat it as such until you know otherwise.
And Gerald, just to add to that, of course, this is where you won't make the decision. Your hospital will be, of course, discussing it with the epidemiologist here at Nebraska, and hopefully will come to a consensus as to how to handle that patient.
I'm just looking at that, that first hour is where the battle lays with most of us small hospitals. I mean, once we know what we know, then it's easy to make a decision. But then when you're battling that first part,
right?
They have a fever. They're always potentially pushing. I mean, and it's like the gentleman, the other counterpart is half the time, the first hour we've already processed it, ran it, we didn't even know there was an issue. So it's more about writing the insert report of the cleanup than the actual prevention sometimes, unfortunately, in the lab.
Yeah.
So again, that's where, if you guys can communicate, if you can make sure that there's information out to everybody to communicate, if there's a suspect at all, if they can get that communication to the laboratory. But like you said, we don't always know that. But if there is a suspicion at all, no matter how low or high that is, if you can get that information to the laboratory, that will just help keep them safe and they can take the necessary precautions ahead of time.
Very good point. So yes, that first hour is the most critical. And maybe the one question you could ask is going back to how your patients are being screened. I know a lot of hospitals have dropped not only the Ebola, but probably have even drop the COVID questions. So approach your hospital authorities, ask them how they are handling screening in your emergency room. Ask them if they still include the travel question. I think it starts there instead of waiting until they're back in triage and an hour later you find out. So, all right. Other questions? Do know your local health department. They are the ones that are going to have that co-op plan or a CONOPS plan, as we've mentioned here. And they could also be very helpful in what you can plan for, because they know your hospitals better. When it comes to packaging and shipping, certainly contact us here at the MPHL, because we can help you with that part of it too. So I think I'll leave it at that. All right. Somebody has a question here regarding videos that have been used or have been created to demonstrate the partner method checklist of specimen collection. And yes, I've got some NETEC, what do you call it, videos that can be very helpful, because it includes that PPE that you'll need, and it'll review that part of it as well as the specimen collection too. So I'll make sure and get those links out to all of you to include in your planning too. And the most important thing I can say is that this is something you don't just stick in, print out and stick in your binders. You and wait until it actually happens to you before you dig that procedure out. In reality, you should actually be exercising this, and just start with talking it over with your emergency room. That's what we would call a tabletop. But then at some point, we had recommended that at least on a yearly basis, if you could do the full advanced PPE, practice it, exercise it, and then since you're in the PPE, practice the collection part. It just make it easier for your facility. So Joelle, I'm glad you brought that comment up. We will definitely share the partnership, the partner method of specimen collection with you. And how does this differ from just regular specimen collection? Well, for those of you that were there back in 2014 and 15, in reality, there's a huge difference. We don't recommend at all that just one person goes in. There's too much error that can possibly occur if you just send one person in. So what we recommend is that you do a partner method. That partner literally reads step by step how to do the process, because there's 4 different disinfection steps that have been added. And along each way, it's to mitigate the possibility of a tube being contaminated, or the outside of your biohazard bag being contaminated, and then just, passing to the lab or passing on to your public health lab. So we actually highly recommend that you take this procedure and walk through it. Maybe at first walk through it without PPE, and then walk through it again with all the advanced PPE. And so you will notice that on our, see if I can bring that up also, on our site, as to nphl.org, We have under hot topics added it right now here for front lines, what is recommended, that the frontline guide that NETEC puts out will also be added here. I believe that there is also an MOU with our, and that's what this is all about, is for our kit that we provided. We use state funding to do that, and the state asked us that we have an MOU with that kit. But here is that collection checklist for partner method. And the couriers also need access to the maps to deliver it to NPHL. And there's the emergency guide response that needs to go with each of our kits as well, but it should be included in that kit already. All right. So with that, I'll back it up and ask once again, any last minute questions from our laboratorians on this topic? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go back to our agenda, and now we'll get into our other outbreaks and wonder if, and we were going to start with probably one of the most current one, and that would be cholera in Haiti. And not that we have it ever in Nebraska, believe it or not, on occasion, we will get cholera in Nebraska. It may be from elsewhere besides Haiti, but regardless, it's something our laboratories need to know about. So Brianna, or possibly even Matt, are you on?
Hi, Karen, it's Brianna, I'm on.
Great.
So yeah, I see the little blurb we have there. Yeah, the CDC, the Vibrio and cholera team at CDC sent out an email Friday, I believe. And they were just, making sure everybody is informed. But after 3 years of no cases reported from Haiti, they have been receiving reports of suspected and confirmed cases since October. As of November 15th, there's been 9,600 suspected cases, 821 confirmed, and 188 deaths in Haiti. And like Karen said, as there has not been any cases reported in the United States from travelers returning from Haiti, but there has been 8 cases reported from other countries such as Pakistan, Iraq, and Bangladesh. Community transmission in the United States is very unlikely just due to our great infrastructures we have here. But of course, the biggest thing is the treatment because it can be very fatal. All of our local health departments, when they do receive a lab report of a Vibrio like illness in their surveillance queue, they do follow up. They're required to use a cholera and other Vibrio illness surveillance report from case report form from the CDC, which assesses their exposures, if they've traveled, their symptoms, their clinical picture, if they've consumed any seafood, mostly for the Vibrio part. But so we do collect all that information on any lab report that is sent to the state and our local health departments. So I'll let MPHL or Emily kind of just briefly touch on the lab piece for Vibrio and cholera.
I think the biggest thing to note here is just to be on the lookout for it. Everyone here on this call does know that we do see Vibrio cholera very occasionally in the state of Nebraska. So just wanted everyone aware that this situation is occurring and that we may see a slight uptick in isolation requests for this based on a positive NAT test.
Right. Now, is cholera on our GI panels?
Yes.
I should know that.
Karen, yes, it is. This is Pete. We do want any positive Vibrios on a GI panel sent to the public health lab for culture if it's not done in-house or at a reference lab. as Emily said, we do see Vibrio cholera once in a while. We do see the other Vibrio cases as well. But yeah, send them to us and we'll try to do a culture and see if it is a Vibrio cholera, and then we look to see if it's toxigenic or not.
Right. And I know that sometimes it could be a bad habit to batch your reportable organisms that you send to NPHL, but in this case, it really is important to send it to us as soon as possible. So hopefully the day that it turned positive on your BioFire, it would be awesome if you could get that in the mail to us as soon as possible. And I don't remember from our Title 173, is Vibrio an immediate, or is it just a 1 week notification requirement?
So Vibrio species is 7 days, I believe, and then cholera would be immediate.
Okay. All right. Good to know. Good to know. All right. So any questions about the cholera?
Karen, this is Brian Lenz. I'm trying to remember, was it a couple years ago? There was a cross reactivity with the BioFire reagents and cholera, Vibrio cholera.
Ooh.
Is that still
So-
an issue now?
That's not an issue. I believe if I remember correctly, it was more Vibrio and not cholera specific. There is separate targets for Vibrio species and Vibrio cholera. And so that was a Vibrio, and that actually was sourced back to the media that was being used as a stool preservative, because the agar in it is actually derived from seaweed, and thus they were picking up Vibrio species within that. That has been fixed, is my understanding, but that was the source of that situation.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right, we'll go on. Is Samir on?
I believe he's here today.
Okay. Anybody want to comment on monkeypox? It's still here. I know the numbers have gone down. Emily, do you have any comments about the numbers right now?
As you said, the numbers have gone down. Testing requests have decreased, not only in the state of Nebraska, but nationwide as well. But of course, please be on the lookout for it. It is still out there. It is still circulating within the nation. If there is any testing requests, and Nebraska Public Health Lab is still providing those testing on a rapid turnaround basis within about 48 hours and free of charge.
Okay, yeah.
And this is Allison. Samira would have to correct me on this, but I don't think we've had a new case in close to a month now. So
That is correct. Yes.
yeah.
And that's really good. So, but it's not like we can say, yay, it's done. We always will have to keep that in mind. All right.
Yep. Well, and I know I was just on I took a vaccinology course last week, and they were talking about, some disparities with access to vaccine, and, Black and Hispanic men, particularly gay and bisexual men, are still being disproportionately impacted. Although some inroads have been made, in the last few months, getting those populations vaccinated, but there's still, a gap in that.
Yeah, good to know. Okay, any other questions?
Karen, this is Brenda Soto. I just
Yes.
wanted to point out, I did, and maybe a lot of you have seen this too, but there is some grant opportunity for extended funding for only certain jurisdictions. Douglas County was one of the jurisdictions listed if they wanted to apply for additional funding. And I know cases are going down, and we probably wouldn't qualify based on priority, but I do throw that out there if anyone from Douglas County is on and wants to run down that path with me. I'd be happy to support that.
Wow, that's good to know. But it is, Brenda, you say it is based on the numbers of,
Yeah, it's priority, so I doubt we would even qualify based on numbers.
all right, well,
Brenda, this is Chad. We can be in touch on that.
All right, that'd be great. Why don't you just reach out on the backside?
Thanks.
Thanks.
thank you. Excellent. All right. Thought we'd briefly discuss HIAs, hospital-acquired infections, could also be known as laboratory-acquired infections. Is Ishrat on, please?
She's not here and neither is Dr. Oshoff, so I don't believe
Okay.
they have an update.
All right, I can share just a little bit there that we have been meeting with with Ishrat in discussing essentially two things, and that would be Canada ARIS, which to this day, Dr. Iwan tells us that Chicago has a fair number of them. So he's surprised that Nebraska doesn't have more. So we want to make sure our laboratorians truly have the everything in place to be able to identify Canada ARIS. The other item we've discussed is some of the more resistant enterobacteriales, and that would be specifically, I mean, there's a number of them, but right now it's your Pseudomonas that are the carbapenem resistant organisms for Pseudomonas aeruginosa. So we may try to put out some information on that via our newsletters. So, all right. Anybody have anything on SARS that they'd like to share? How our SARS-CoV-2 is doing, what our infection rates are. Now that I'm sure we have within the month had some positives, right?
Cases are going up again. So please continue to report as needed. And please continue to watch for that and test for that. I don't have exact numbers right now, but
That's fine. That's fine. So anybody else? Any questions on the packaging and shipping part? I think all of you have been doing really good on packaging as a category B. This is a reminder that DOT did send out an alert about 1.5 to 2 years ago that all COVID specimens, not regardless if you have an exclusive courier, have to be put into a category B box. Now, they didn't say anything about monkeypox when it came out, but that still holds true for COVID. So it has to be properly packaged as a category B. All right. Moving onward, Brianna, do you have anything you'd like to share in regards to our enteric outbreaks?
Not too much. It's been pretty quiet, surprisingly. Typically, we would see a lot of norovirus outbreaks right now, but we haven't. We've had like one maybe a month ago. And when I was on my Norostat call for CDC, which is like 12 other states that participate in rapid reporting of norovirus outbreaks, they're kind of seeing similar, like in the last month, similar trends. So we'll see if it picks up here. But
well, with winter coming on, I suspect it will.
yeah, definitely. It could
Yes,
be
Brianna,
just a shift in later season too.
Brianna, I think you just jinxed us all with a slow enterics leading into a holiday that's bird-based.
Oh, I know.
Good point. Good point, Emily. Definitely.
Yeah, and I guess I will say we are, I've been working with North Central district on a salmonella cluster up there. Possibly like a church festival where there was food catered in, but also, other people just brought in random side dishes. But we're waiting on whole genome sequencing on that because there are a couple of people. I think we have 5 cases right now, so it's rather small. But the potential could have been, there's exposures, could have been 200 something people at this festival, but there was a few people that reported not going to the festival. So we're trying to work that out, and whole genome sequencing will be helpful too to see, like, is there 2 different outbreaks going on, or is there just a couple sporadics in there, or is it a true outbreak?
All right. Thank you,
That's it.
Brianna. Are there any comments or, excuse me, questions for Brianna? If not, let's move on to arbovirus. Is Jeff on? Oh, I think I remember him emailing earlier to say he probably could not be on today. So we'll leave that for another time. Is Kristen on for TV?
I am. I don't have any updates except that we're sitting at 27 cases for the year. So we have exceeded the 22 from last year, and that's all I have.
All right. Yes, thank you.
Karen, I
And-
didn't really get to give an RSV flu update.
Oh, I apologize. I skipped right over that.
Which is,
Go ahead.
the thing that is happening right now.
Yes, and you can go ahead.
So RSV did go down a little bit this last week, and it's starting to slowly go down. So we hope that that trend continues. Flu though is shooting up, as you all probably are well aware of by seeing the number of reports coming in. So keep testing, and we are seeing mostly H3s. We do have the occasional H1 pop up. Hardly any Bs that we're seeing. So if any of you have a PCR positive B that you could send to the public health lab, that would be helpful, because we haven't had hardly any that we see on any sort of testing. Whether it be an antigen, you collect another specimen to get it into us, that would be helpful. So keep testing and keep reporting so we can continue to know what's going on out there.
All right. All right. I have only 2 left, and if anybody wants to report on STDs or leads, you're welcome to do that now.
This is Jason. I don't have anything.
Okay. All right, Jason. Good to have you on, though.
Thanks.
And Sandra or Derry, anything on leads?
Yeah, we are updating our blood lead testing plan, and that should be out to be released in the beginning of the year, hopefully.
Okay, that's good to know.
That's it.
Okay. Just briefly, I wanted to go through in these last few minutes. I think that the suspected organisms coming in for the LRN rule out and refer is slowing a little bit. But Emily, do you have any good stories for us or reminders for our laboratorians?
Nothing on the way of good stories lately, but just a reminder that if you have preferred your rule out and refer procedures and you determine that a specimen needs to be forwarded to Nebraska Public Health Lab, please feel free to go ahead and use, and that should be your first point of contact, the 24/7 NPHL pager. The phone number for that is 402-888-5588. We do spell it out in the pager now, but that does require you to physically put in the phone number. And there is an option for leaving extension numbers as well. And there's guidance on how to do that. You cannot or verbally just say the phone number, it will not capture that information and a page will not be generated. But that pager is manned 24/7, even on holidays. So if something comes up, go ahead and give us a page. We'll get you set up with submitting it to us for further identification.
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned that because that pager has tripped up people at times. So it isn't your typical pager number type thing where you leave a voicemail. You definitely have to put a callback number in it. So I think I'll skip LRNC today and move on to safety tip of the month, which was same as last month. I did not get out a email advertising, if that's what you call it, but offering safer behaviors in the biosafety cabinet. But I really think I'm going to, knowing what we've got out there nowadays, it's a 60-minute program that is going to be made available to you as laboratorians for free. So please email me or reply when I finally get that email out. There is competency built into this. So you could use this as your annual competency of how to use the biosafety cabinet, which I think is important. I'm not sure many laboratories do that at this point, but they should be. This should be added to your lineup of competencies that you are required to do in the laboratory. Packaging and shipping, we're still working on where's that Ebola kit. A number of you again had said you are not familiar where it is, and so we will help you with that process. We hope to sit down here in the next week now to look at our laboratory training calendar for 2023. I think it's going to begin with Graham Stain's training for the generalist, the laboratory generalist. We've done that before, but there's always new people in the laboratory, so we'd like to get that to them. We also hope to do, I don't foresee getting to the laboratory BT wet workshop, but I truly want to have that both here on site and also to offer it via Zoom. So we will be working with that more. We do plan on doing 2 challenge sets as well to match the 2 LPXs that are out there. A new topic, which we've been trying for every year, is chemical terrorism. So we've got 18 laboratories across the state who have been involved with that program in the past. So we will let you know what that's all about. All right. Last but not least, are there any other topics that any of you in our laboratories in Nebraska would like to bring up? All right. Hearing none, next month, we're kind of up in the air as to when we're going to do the meeting. Normally it would fall December 19th. So don't know if many people will be around for it. I know a lot of the state people and NPHL people might not be here for it. And laboratories could be very busy at that point or because people are out on vacations. So with that, we'll see if we can't move it up sometime earlier in the month and to keep you informed as to what's happening. So with that comment, I'd like to say thank you all for our state DHHS friends to join us and our NPHL, as well as all the laboratories across Nebraska. So thank you and hope you have a great Thanksgiving. And we're thankful that you're all here to assist us in the work here in Nebraska. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Karen.